Peace. Okay, I just wanted to take a moment to build about the difference between history and historiography. I was inspired to do it because, just engaging in conversations with people and then seeing also a lot of things posted on Facebook. And I realized that there's a lacking in understanding of what actual history is. So, kind of wanted to share with people what historiography is. When you think about history, history is, what we started to learn in elementary school. It's a subject and it's talking about past events or dates, and that happened in the past. That happened a long time ago. Now, when you think about historiography, historiography is the process of critically examining these events and these dates that happened in the past with the intention of constructing their present-day reality. How those events, how those dates set the stage or shaped where we are presently standing. Now, stop for a moment, and if you're inside of a building or a structure, consider the fact that that building was constructed in the past. It has some date on it. Maybe it was constructed in 1898 or something like that. So that is a part of history that you're standing in right now. If you go look in your refrigerator, you're going to see products that was manufactured in the past. Even if you bought it today or it was manufactured today, the ingredients themselves were made in the past. So that's a part of history. Even if it's a fruit or a vegetable or something like that, it grew up in the past, and now it is right for you to eat today. So even that is a form of history. The clothes that you have on, even if you sold the clothes and put it together today, the materials themselves come from the past. Even this tree. This tree right here. That tree grew up in the past, and it's here now. So history is inescapable. It's all around us. It's on us. And whatever you ate recently, it's in you. Going back to what I was saying about a building that you may be standing in, or if you're not inside a building, look around you. You see structures around you. These structures were built in the past. When these structures were built in the past, they were designed according to specific dimensions, length, width, and depth. These dimensions demand of us a certain level of conformity to the way in which the structure is designed. In other words, if this building was made in 1898 and we still live in that building today without any modifications, then we have to conform to the dimensions of that structure. If it's a stairwell here, we got to use that stairwell to go upstairs. If there's not a door there, we can't just walk through the wall. If we want to change or make modifications to that, we have the ability to do that. But the point is, these structures and their dimensions demand a certain degree of conformity of us if we live inside of those structures. And that is just in a tangible way. Now consider all of the intangible structures that were created and made in the past. Ideas, inventions, experiences, attitudes. Those are also structures. They also have dimensions to them, and people also conform to the dimensions of those intangible structures. For example, you may have heard the phrase, "I'm just saying." Somebody made that up in the past. And now you have a whole bunch of people conforming to the dimensions of that particular idea or concept. So that was a past historical event that is existing right now that has shaped and set the stage for the present day reality. Now, when you deal with conversations with people and you're talking about history or things like that, when it's very topical and kind of glossed over, it's simple for people to have a conversation about how Jimi Hendrix changed the entire musical landscape of not just every genre itself, but also rock music in particular. You know, and he was only here for, you know, a very short period of time, you know, a few years or whatever, but the contributions he made in the past affect how we see rock music today, now. So it would be impossible for you to really understand the present-day social, economic, and psychological landscape of rock music without considering the contributions that Jimi Hendrix made back in the 60s. Right? And it's pretty simple for people to understand, right? They can see the correlation and the connection there. Talk about basketball. You know, the Fab Five freshmen, these young boys who are at Michigan University, they changed the entire landscape as far as the way uniforms are worn in basketball today. So prior to them, you weren't seeing basketball players walking around with these big baggy shorts on and things like that. Now, you look today, that is the norm. That's the standard. Not just only in college basketball, but that's also a standard in the professional basketball leagues in Europe. So it's impossible for you to really understand the present-day landscape of basketball as far as uniforms are concerned if you have no clue or no idea of the contributions that the Fab Five freshmen made. You know, so I'm sure that's easy for people to understand as well. You know, the same thing that I was given an analogy about in regards to, you know, the food that might be in your refrigerator. If you're not mindful of the food that's in your refrigerator and the spoilage date, you may end up feeding that to your child, and that is definitely not a good situation. So I'm sure that it's obvious that people can see how the past in that context is relative to the present. Because if you're not, you may put your child as well as yourself in a bad situation because you're not paying attention to the spoilage date. You know, and I'm sure that's simple as well for people to understand. Now, when I spoke about history being everything, going back to what I was talking about in regards to school, people being taught, you know, history is this particular subject. Like I said, history is all around, on, and in us. Even with the subjects that we was learning in school, if you go to math class, math is also history class. Why? Because the methods you're using in class, whether it's arithmetic, algebra, or whatever, these were methods that were designed or discovered back in the past. I mean, the numerals themselves are Arabic, and that's something that comes from the past that we're using to today. Same thing with, you know, science class. You know, the discoveries and the observations and even the language to define certain type of things scientifically was created in the past, so you can't get around history. I mean, even if you're in physical education class and you're doing jumping jacks, somebody came up with jumping jacks in the past. So, like I said, these are structures nonetheless, just like buildings, that have specific dimensions to them, and if they are still active and relevant to today, then we conform to those dimensions, and they are our present-day reality that we're standing in. Now, I'm sure all of that is pretty simple for people to understand. Now, when we get into discussions about certain parts of the past or events that may not even have been one small contribution. For example, look at something like the Native American genocide that happened over generations and generations of time. Look at things like the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, segregation, woman suffrage, you know, the whole gender rights and gender equality that women had fought for, and they still don't ultimately have in this country, that happened over generations and generations of time. It seems like as soon as you bring those things up, now automatically people get funny. People act like, oh, we can't talk about that. Let's just forget about it, this, that, and the third. Like they can't see the correlation and the connection between those past events and how they shaped and defined and set the stage for the present-day social, economic, and psychological landscape we're standing in right now. It's like people short-circuit all of a sudden. And like I said, the worst part about it is these weren't just small events. These were events that happened over generations and generations and generations of time, sometimes hundreds of years. And it's strange why people can't see how these things have also shaped the present day reality that we're standing in right now. It's like they don't even want to consider that. They don't even want to think about those things. So what does that honestly tell you about those people who are directly connected to those ancestors who actually experienced those events? What does that tell you? One thing that it does tell you is that they're also not considerate of you. It's impossible to consider you. Why is it impossible to consider you? Because, like I said, when people look at history as just something linear, right? And they think, well, that was something that happened in the past, is that and the third, and they can't see how the present day reality was a stage that was set by those events that set things in course to be where we're at today. Then it's impossible for them to have a true and an honest and a good assessment of what is going on right now. In a very simple way, it's like saying if you don't know the past, it's impossible for you to understand the present, and you can't even define or think about what's going to happen potentially in the future. It's the exact same thing that I'm saying right now. So when you see people and it's like they want to accept and talk about everything else, but then when it comes to this big chunk of history that happened in the past that obviously shaped the economic landscape socially as well as psychologically that we're living in today, then they don't know what's going on right now. They don't even know what's really going on with you, seeing that you are a direct relative or an ancestor of this particular history of those events. So I'm saying all of this to say, if we really want to elevate our condition as a people, all people, we really want to see this world changed, and we want to see a better future, we have to have a mind state that's dealing with historiography. We have to critically examine those past events, no matter how painful they feel. And I got to say this too. A lot of times, you look at Caucasians and they don't want to talk about slavery or the transatlantic slave trade or any of these other different past events, and they didn't even experience it. Their people didn't even go through it, and they still don't even want to talk about it. But then when it comes to Pearl Harbor, and it comes to the Holocaust, and then it comes to Patriots Day, 9/11, and it comes to all of these other different events that are related to them, you better not forget those things. You better remember these things. But then when it comes to you, it's like, oh, let's get over it. Oh, we're only human. Why are you talking about that? That happened in the past. That doesn't happen anymore. This, that, and the third. This, that, and the... And some of you black people, ignorant black people, accept that. So what ends up happening is you put yourself in an abusive relationship because you're not considered. You're considering everything about them. You are being mindful and concerned about them, but because you can't even put who you are on the table, it's impossible for them to even have any kind of consideration about who you are and where you come from, which means the past, those events that shape and set the stage for who you are in this society today, because they don't understand that past, because they have no idea about those type of events that set your people in motion to be where they're at today, it's impossible for them to have any kind of real consideration for you to today, because they don't know you. And if you don't know the past, you don't know the present, and you cannot possibly define or shape the future. So even if they don't want to hurt you, you're going to get abused. Some way, shape, or form, because they are not considering you. And anytime you accept a position like that, where it's fine for them not to even think about or talk about or consider who you are or what your people went through, but you can sit and talk and think about everything they went through, you're going to get abused. And that is one of the effects of racism. that is one of the effects of sexism, because you think about it too when you're dealing with women. A lot of people don't want to talk about women's suffrage. They don't want to talk about the gender roles that women are in today and how those different events in the past have set the stage for women to be where they're actually at today. Now, suppose I went to a woman and I don't even want to think about that stuff because it hurts me. It makes me feel bad. I'm going to end up abusing her automatically, even if I don't want to. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it. And, I may not really mean it. But because I'm really not even considering her or her story, because I'm not even considering that, I have no choice but to do things that overstep certain boundaries. So I say all of that to appeal to all of you out here who are listening to this and watching this part of history, because this is history too. If you really want to make some change, you got to start engaging people in critically examining these past events and how they set the stage for today, just like you do everything else. It's easy for y'all to talk about sports and athletics and all of these other topical issues, but then when it comes to stuff like racism, religion, politics, and stuff like that, people act scared. When these are some of the major events that have taken place in history to define where we're at right now. So you can kind of see why people are in the condition that they're in, because they don't want to engage in the critical examination of these events. Which means you are in a position right now where you are completely vulnerable and ignorant to be able to do anything presently or in the future to change these events, because you have no clue what the hell happened. So, black people, white people alike, quit being scared. If you really want to do something about change, you can't have this attitude like, oh, everything's different now. We're all human. How do you know that? Unless you have conversations with people who were never even given the respect of being called humans. It's easy for some of y'all to say that, but you got to think about it. I come from a long lineage of people who were defined literally as subhuman for hundreds of years. And then after hundreds of years of being considered subhuman, we were elevated, for lack of a better word, to another sub-condition, socio-economically, as second-class citizens for another 100 years. So in 1965, America said, yeah, your people, you can participate in America. That's only 46 years ago. That's just a generation ago that my people have only started to be considered as human beings and as citizens. So like I said earlier about historiography and intangible structures that were created that we conform to based upon those dimensions, do you think those structures or those ideas and constructs that people had about who my people were and the attitudes and the experiences that we went through, are all of those structures gone now? Or do people still conform to the dimensions of those structures, those ideas? I mean, there's still buildings around that were constructed back then, literally, that we still have to conform to because they're historical landmarks today. So you still also have those intangible structures that people conform to today as well, because like I said, only 46 years ago black people were allowed to start participating in America. So it's ignorant for anybody to sit there and say, oh, that was in the past, things have changed, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. That shows a complete ignorance of what history actually is. So I appeal to all people who really want to do something about changing things. You got to start having these kind of conversations. You really got to start building about these things that happened in the past beyond the topical discussions of, oh, yeah, man, I can see why Sister Amy McPherson set in motion, the construction of mega churches in the United States of America. Yeah, we can talk about that, and, we can talk about this and all this other stuff, but we got to start having these real discussions, and unless we start having these real discussions, nothing's going to change. So So with that said, keep in mind that history is all around us, it's on us, and it's in us. And it's important for us to understand that, you know, history is now. History is now. Peace.